world order
instead of liberal or globalist. What we've had is decades of, I think it's
the new world order above all. Problem is, at some point, it's going to... The man Trump wanted as our ambassador to the States has a handle on what's behind the new world order. So why do people on the right admire Vladimir Putin?
I think it's a question of people who believe in nation-state democracy have some admiration for Vladimir Putin. And of course, what we've had is decades of our political leaders effectively trying to get rid of nation-state democracy. So what you saw in 2016 was nation-state democracy making a comeback.
Is Russia a democracy?
Not properly, no.
Is Russia a democracy?
Not a proper democracy as we understand it, no.
Democracy is under fire in Russia. Since Putin came to power, more than 20 opposition figures and journalists have been killed. If you care about democracy, this is an important place. The Kremlin is 100 yards away, and it was here almost 2 years ago that Boris Nemtsov, the bravest and most outspoken of the leaders of the Russian opposition, was shot dead. People ask questions about Vladimir Putin's commitment to democracy.
But democracy, please be careful. And you could not teach us democracy because you're trying to impose to every people, every state, American system of values without asking. And it is absolutely racist. You are racist.
In Russia, the pro-Kremlin camp doesn't like being challenged.
We don't know.
But what happens is, if you're critical of Vladimir Putin, you may end up dead.
For example, if you are engaged in WikiLeaks, you can be murdered.
Julian Assange is dead, is he?
No, but the people...
So hold on a second. Please, tell me about Boris Nemtsov. He was murdered 100 yards from...
By Putin? You think he was murdered by Putin?
So where he was critical of Putin. Can you tell me, can you list the number of American journalists who have died under Obama?
It is completely stupid kind of conversation.
Okay, very good.
Please, I'm very nice to meet you, but I don't like to continue.
So do you think Mr. Trump will make the world a safer place? Shortly after he walked out of our interview, Mr. Dugan posted a blog in which he accused me of making fake news. He called me a repulsive bastard, an utter cretin, and a globalist swine. Such is the language of the New World Order. In America now, you can hear the echo of Russian politics.
You are fake news. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. Get him out. I don't know if I would have done well, but I would have been boom, boom, boom.
I think democracy is in trouble. I think the example that Trump set in the way he conducted and ran his election campaign, his use of open lies, fake news, the hint of violence, I think all of this was incredibly damaging to democracy.
They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks.
What's interesting about Trump, of course, is I think one of the great comments of the whole US campaign was that you should take Trump seriously, but not literally. And that, I think, comes right through that campaign.
Human beings, right?
Reasons for playing nice with Putin.
Why get along and agree?
You can see why Putin might want to get along with Trump.
When you
After Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, the West imposed sanctions on Russia, which cost the country $160 billion and hurt Putin too. But that didn't stop Putin sending his ghost army into the east, soldiers disguised as volunteers.
I wish I got a free gun for being a volunteer.
Today, the war continues. How far is the front line from here?
The enemy's on two sides from us. They're close, sometimes very close.
Who's driving this war?
It's Russia controlling them, and they're Russia's pawns.
And we're moving because there's a bit of a firefighting behind us.
Wow,
Incoming,
actually
you can
going
hear
where
the
it
crack.
happens. How dare you?
The young have deserted the village of Vodenoya. Only the old remain. I asked this man what it's like living on the front line.
My children will say Russian fascists killed their Ukrainian father. Sometimes it's so frightening. 2 weeks ago, after artillery fire, my wife suffered a stroke.
Случился микроинсульт. Two years on, and nearly 10,000 dead. There's no sign to the end of fighting here in the eastern Ukraine. But the fear is, with Donald Trump in the White House, the prospects for peace are even further away than ever. But does the Donald give a damn?
So you don't think Ukraine's
I don't like what's happening with Ukraine,
Yeah.
but that's really a problem that affects Europe a lot more than it affects us. And they should be leading some of this charge.
So you wouldn't allow Ukraine into NATO?
I would not care that much, to be honest with you, whether it goes in or doesn't go in. I wouldn't care.
You care about what I say, right?
Russia denies they're the aggressor in Ukraine. In 2014, I caught up with President Putin in Siberia and challenged him. Malaysians, British, Dutch, do you regret the killings in the Ukraine?
The main problem is that the authorities in Kiev do not want a political dialogue with the east of their country.
But what of the Russians? In Moscow today, the line remains, Russia has done nothing wrong.
There is no Russian aggression
There
at
is
all.
no agenda for a greater Russia?
There is no agenda for greater Russia. We want to have a strong
Beautiful
and
buildings.
self-sufficient country, but there are no plans for any expansion.
Expensive
of Russia.
buildings for a place that
So
has
will
the
America
budget
change
less
tack
than
on
California.
Ukraine? This week, Trump has said that in return for a nuclear weapons deal, he might lift sanctions.
Trump has to be mindful of Russia's very clear interests in Ukraine and how their politics ultimately play out. I do think that there are some thorny issues regarding Crimea, regarding Ukraine, that Trump is going to have to work through with Putin. They are within the sphere of influence of his country. They're on his borders. He has every right to have concerns about them and what we're doing in these regards.
But if Donald Trump turns a blind eye to Russian warmongering and lifts sanctions, then the Kremlin might see it as a green light to exert its power further west.
I haven't been sleeping well since the invasion of Crimea. I have since then begun to worry about what
Ignorance is
Russia's
bliss, but only
aims
to
are
those
in
who are
Europe,
ignorant.
and about the possibility of a nuclear clash or a conventional clash of an incredibly dangerous kind in the Baltic states, in Central Europe, and in Ukraine. Having Trump in the White House does not make me feel better.
Even if the unverified dossier is a pack of lies, it could still change things. Trump's already sounding tougher on Russia's actions in Syria. He can't let it look like Putin has a hold over him.
Wow.
Do you honestly believe that Hillary would be tougher on Putin than me? Does anybody in this room really believe that?
If Putin is blackmailing Trump, that's no basis for a stable relationship.
You love him.
If he's not, you still can't rule out a clash.
They both seem like rather brittle personalities when it comes to being challenged. We've seen that in Trump, and we've certainly seen it in Putin. And so I think I would not want to see these two get into some kind of, a macho shootout.
Why not?
Whatever the truth, Trump's locked in a strange embrace with Vladimir Putin, an ally who could so easily become an adversary. If
Well,
the
Dylan
bromance
came from
ends and
Russian
President
roots.
Donald Trump
He's a
falls
wonderful
out with
person.
President Vladimir Putin,
It would be
then,
great if we could get
to
along,
put it mildly, that's not good.
but not playing to somebody's
We
hands.
face the prospect of a brand new Cold War,
It's terrible.
colder than ever before.
missing for 2 days. A woman is found in the Thames with strange markings on her back.